Hello and welcome back to Podcasting as Praxis. I'm David, my pronouns are he and him.
And I'm Jamie, and my pronouns are also he and him.
Very quick. Yeah. See what happens when Rob's not here, we just don't fuck that up and it's fine. That's the second time we've said that today. That's probably not good. Sorry, Rob.
The stray catcher general.
So, yeah, content warning right now, rather than fucking before the intro. Like, we're just going to do it now while I remember to do it. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court judgment and all of the associated bullshit. So there will be a whole bunch of the worst cunts on earth and their opinions spoken about. So just bear that in mind. With that said,
hell of an intro.
Yeah, we like to keep it light on this podcast.
Yeah.
That's like the opinions of the worst cunts, and here are our guests.
Yeah, different matter. So yeah, here are our guests. So first up we have the wonderful Ross, all the way from New Zealand.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
It's not morning, no. You're turning me into fucking Tony Blair with this shit. Like, I will fully advocate for the internet time zone before I accept that it is morning just now. Absolutely not. And also joining us is the wonderful Juliet Jakes once again.
Hi, my name is Juliet Jakes. My pronouns are she, and still isn't coming back, Graham.
Yeah, and I'm another he, him.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the cast for tonight. However, we are going to run things in a normal-ish way because I can't just talk about the fucking bullshit of that court ruling. So, Jamie has very lovingly went away and prepared some nuggets and I believe some comment or commentary to really round this off.
Yeah, if we have time after the 2 hours hate, yeah. Yeah, so the news. Has anything happened since, like, apart from the court ruling?
No.
I have a piece of paper here that says Pope Dude What New. I'm sure people don't need to be told about that. Pope Francis decided he'd rather die of a stroke than remember meeting JD Vance. So
honestly, 2025 year of the hater. Right, yeah. Hang on long enough to tell JD Vance to go fuck yourself and then die is phenomenal.
It's relatable. Yeah, the people's pope.
The people's pope.
And then the second story for tonight, because we're not going to dwell on that. You know what I mean? The Pope's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what the next one's like. The Supreme Court judgment means I'm eligible to run for it now. So.
I did
every
like
cloud.
I did like that our local sort of main broadcaster was running live updates of the Pope being dead. And I was like, I know it's Easter, but I don't think that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean,
it's good that local news is basically just those "Is Thatcher dead yet?" Twitter accounts.
One of our main outlets is called Stuff. I mean, we are not a serious country.
Fair.
Very much the sort of Scotland of Oceania, I think. New Zealand.
It's a fair assessment.
Damning but fair.
Yeah. The second story I wanted to bring up is, you know how they say politeness costs nothing? They're full of shit. Politeness costs tens of millions of dollars.
Oh, fuck off.
Sam Altman has confirmed that people saying please and thank you to his shitty fucking autocomplete robot is costing him a fortune.
How does that work?
Because it makes the robot has to look at more words, and apparently every word the robot looks at is just ludicrously expensive.
Oh, for crying out loud.
I wish I could charge by the fucking word.
Yeah, right.
It's funny.
I mean, I do, but it
also
doesn't get me anywhere, you know.
Yeah. It's also cooking the planet and draining the oceans.
Yeah, me too.
It's worth noting that the daft fucker said that, like, it's money well spent because you never know. I think implying that, like, you know, the robots might rise up, and if we've been polite to them, they might not kill us all. But it's a fucking autocomplete, Sam. Go fuck yourself.
So these dipshits are imagining that we're going to get Rocco's Basilisk or whatever because we weren't polite enough to the autocomplete.
Yeah.
Great.
So if you do ever find yourself having to deal with the fucking thing, give it as many words as you can, but make sure they're all words that tell it to fuck off.
Oh, I can do that, yeah. Just going to sit and read surrealist poetry to it until it just like kills itself.
It's... I don't know. Every day brings a new joy with this bullshit, eh? Just Sam Altman, the world's sweatiest man. You know, a man who has heard the bone saws in his future being like, please don't be so nice to the computer, but also be nice to it, because when it becomes sentient, it's going to lock us in the pain cube for the rest of eternity. It's just... Yeah.
Be nice to the computer. It might get to Sam before his investors do.
Maybe that's why he's running so fast. He's like, no nightmare that the singularity can come up with can be worse than the Saudi royal family.
Have the Chinese invented these like running robots just so they can get Sam Altman? Like,
he does not look like a man who can run fast.
First deep seek, and then robotic Usain Bolt. What a time to be alive!
The robot dogs are coming for you, Sam.
I hate those fucking things.
I know.
Me and my pals would have killed them all with hammers, I can tell you that much.
I can just imagine that attitude to life of just thinking it would be like nice to have like a fun robot dog. I mean, it's something you sort of did for like 10 minutes at Christmas in sort of like 1991 when a sort of amusing novelty thing you could get from Argus came out. But yeah, I mean, just
it would do a flip and that would be the end of it. That's all you need from it. Just one wee flip and go, I'm bored now.
Yeah, this is going to the charity shop. Yeah.
To be fair, that's more than most of these Boston Dynamics dogs can do anyway. Then you look at them and they sort of like stutter along for a bit and then fall over, and it's like, oh, that was the entire cost of a GDP of a small country just there. Look at it go. Could have just gone to Argos and saved themselves the hassle.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to like support the NYPD with the little dog from Argos, though, because you could just kick that into a hedge.
I sort of feel like the British police would have the little dog from Argus, though. It's just very on brand for this like appalling country.
That little dog from Argos, but with an Uzi sellotape to it.
Yeah. You touch it and just releases fucking pepper spray.
So quite similar to the toys of the late 80s and early 90s anyway, just sharp bits falling off them.
Yeah.
Before it gets recalled, yeah.
Yeah.
It's covered in lead paint.
Yeah, going to be a return guy, but for the really dangerous toys of my childhood.
All right. The final nugget tonight is the Iceland Prison Experiment 2. So a while back we covered a thing where Iceland were I think it was part of the Times's crime and justice commission. Iceland were campaigning that people should be sentenced to jobs in Iceland. And then the new thing is they've opened a store in His Majesty's Prison Oakwood in Staffordshire. So, to read you a bit from the Times, and Iceland Foods opened last month at HMP Oakwood near Wolverhampton, the largest prison in the country. It's part of efforts to help prisoners adjust to the outside world and also offers them the chance to secure a job upon release. So you might be thinking, how does that work? Because prisoners surely don't have money and they don't have kitchens. So inmates are given monopoly-style money to spend, so not money, in other words, which is earned by taking part in various workshops through an incentivized structure for good behaviour, and they can earn up to a maximum of £25 per week.
Fuck off.
Incredible.
Yeah. Prices.
Incredible.
£25 doesn't sound like much, but the prices are cheaper in the prison than they are outside. So I guess we can all look forward to an exciting moral panic about that soon.
Well, that's going to be great. And presumably all the money they kind of quote-unquote spend goes back to Iceland?
Yeah.
Presumably they can only buy, like, Bernard Matthews turkey Twizzlers or something.
Yeah. I'll bet Alfredo still costs £1, though.
But the shop is staffed by prisoners. There was no mention in because this is also like Times Crime and Justice Commission stuff. So there was no mention in the Times article about the prisoners that staff the shop and manage the shop being paid. But those near the end of their sentence are referred to Iceland's Director of Rehabilitation, where he assesses them for possible future employment once they've left prison.
I mean, being referred to Iceland's Director of Rehabilitation for possible future employment is one of the most dystopian sentences I've heard on this podcast, and I don't say that lightly.
You have chosen or been chosen. Like, it's so fucking dystopian.
Yeah. What the fuck have the frozen lasagna guys got a Director of Rehabilitation for? Jesus.
Give him his full title. The Frozen Horse Lasagna Guy.
It's just, I mean, I can imagine the country of Iceland maybe having a Director of Rehabilitation who just throws you into a volcano, but this is...
it's fucked is what it
grim
is.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd take the volcano, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But other rewards that are available for good behaviour include better accommodation and access to a kitchen so you can cook the frozen stuff that you bought with your Monopoly money.
Also a Boots Advantage card, because why not?
Yeah.
Where would where would your country be without Boots Advantage cards? I love the idea of some poor bastard getting all these Monopoly money credits, but he's not like ground enough XP to get a kitchen yet, so he's just sitting in this cell surrounded by slowly defrosting lasagna and turkey Twizzlers.
Yeah, trying to heat them with a lighter.
Dirty protests of the 21st century, man. The future is now.
I love that every time we talk about prisons, there's got to be some sort of like horrifying tweeness to it. What if the prisoners had an Iceland? Wouldn't that be lovely? No.
Nothing.
No, it fucking wouldn't.
Well, like Britain's like the 12th best supermarket chain, you know.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that Oakwood is a fully privatised like prison.
Oh, good, yeah, because we have those.
I can imagine Iceland being very well rewarded on that contract, and knowing how much the British government is worth. It was probably the equivalent to a couple of packets of frozen sausage rolls or something,
and a free ticket to a 7th division football match.
Yeah, I push the boat out here.
I assume that they're making out like bandits. I'd imagine because obviously the Monopoly money they just need someone with a printer to make that, right? That's not costing them anything. But I'd imagine that like the actual when the Monopoly money gets spent, you know, the government pays for that, for the frozen chicken or whatever. And Iceland just keep all of the money, and it's written off on a balance sheet somewhere as like, you know, an exciting opportunity for rehabilitation.
We're going through the prison subsidies, and that's fine. They can spend that on whatever the fuck they like, and they've decided Ersatz Iceland. Okay.
Yeah.
I imagine there's a few ways this can go. It's either going to be dated stock, so it's going to be like the foulest, like frozen shit you've ever seen in your life, or I'm just wondering, are they going to have security tags on stuff like they do for expensive cuts of meat? Like, you know, how is that going to work? Oh, you're caught shoplifting from the prison Iceland. Where are you going to go?
Presumably it's just a paradise for the security guy, and he gets to just fully body search everyone as they leave.
There's a guy with a very particular set of skills for seeking out frozen goods from cavities, and he is having the time of his fucking life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little personal note here. My secondary school was called Oakwood for fans of Michel Foucault and everything being prison.
Yeah, but I mean, presumably, whoever, I don't know who's the minister for prisons.
It's that James Timpson, isn't it?
Is it? All right.
I think so.
Presumably, he got a couple of good lasagnas out of this deal.
Well, his big thing is rehabilitation, isn't it? Of
that's
having
right.
people go and work for Timpson's after being in prison. So I suspect that he will be shit-canned soon enough for being, like, too woke. And, I don't know, Wes Streeting will just get to combine the job with his healthcare job or something. And, everyone will be happy ever after.
Don't even.
Healthcare and incarceration, that's basically the same thing, isn't it? I mean...
All right, Foucault, right?
The healthcare to prison pipeline, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are working on it in this benighted fucking aisle. Shall we just get into the main topic?
Yeah,
why not?
Hello, and thank you for choosing Podcasting as Praxis. Our podcasters are experiencing an unusually high volume of unfunny bits at the moment, so you've been placed in a queue. Your patronage is important to us, and I need to inform you of the great benefits you freeloaders are missing out on by not subscribing on Patreon. A back catalogue of premium episodes, plus
2 bonus episodes
every month, ad-free regular episodes, plus you get access to our Discord, which, in addition to being able to harass the Praxis Cast crew with your favourite Star Wars characters, will allow you to listen to all of your favourite cutting room floor moments, such as... and...
Fuck off, Alistair.
Subscribing lets us create more of these hilarious moments, so please do subscribe for just $5 a month on patreon.com/praxiscast. And now, back to the episode.
It's a very gentle transition, that.
Well, I'm glad some transitions are gentle. Jesus.
So,
we've got to wait 2 years before we move into the next segment.
Oh, mate, you don't know what the wait list is.
So, the case and the judgment, I thought, is probably the best place to start on this. So, a little small bean company called For Women Scotland Limited. It's important to give them their full title there. Got owned in the Scottish courts twice over because they had a disagreement with the Scottish government over, this is such small shit, over whether or not trans women should be counted as part of the quota on public board representation as women.
Well,
that was it.
Congratulations to you at Podcasting as Praxis for correctly realising that Scott Paul was the gateway to hell.
Yeah.
Yep. I was right this whole fucking time. Nobody listened. You should have listened. Yeah, this is all absolutely... And like, I could even go back further on this. Like, the reason that things are the way they are now is because the Scottish government dragged their heels over all of the gender reform they were going to do, doing like 2.5 fucking consultations when only one was required, making it last years longer than they did, than it needed to be, and also allowing it to only finally move forward after the British government had already proven it could section whatever the fuck number, not 28, the other one, the other bad one, where they killed off the fucking independence referendum request, and they said, no, you can fuck off, you're not getting it. And then that gave them carte blanche to do whatever they liked, and guess what the next target was? It was anything to do with gender reform, which is very cool. And this has now led us to a point where the worst possible outcome from this absolutely nothing fucking case, which should have been which was chucked out fucking twice as go away, you are being ridiculous. The UK Supreme Court has now turned this into the worst of all worlds. And I'd just like to read out a list of names. Robert John Reid, Vivian Rose, Patrick Stewart Hodge, Ingrid Ann Simler, David Lloyd Jones. This is unrelated to anything at all, and it's just a list of random names that I have accrued. So, the judgment itself means basically everything was revolving around the Equality Act, because of course it was. The Equality Act, as we all know, is largely a bit of a piece of shit and was hastily put together and generally didn't actually have the best interests of everyone at heart, which is amazing when you think of a bit of legislation from, what year was that again? 2010?
It was drafted
by
a normal
year with good governments.
Yeah, I mean, drafted by the Gordon Brown Labour government and passed by the Conservative government, I think.
Oh, good. We love bipartisanship, don't
exactly, yeah. Full West
It always
Wing.
gets the results. Yeah. So, basically, the outcome of this was that the Supreme Court looked at the Equality Act and went, yes, this is the first time we've looked at this in 15 years, and we think it's too confusing now, and decided that anything that related to the words man, woman, or sex could only apply to biological sex, which in itself just means what was recorded on the birth certificate. Now, there's problems with that. Like, assigned sex at birth, sometimes that's actually not that straightforward. Like, there's a lot of ways that can not be actually correct, and there can be all sorts of, like, massive scare quotes corrective surgeries, etc., that can completely fuck this up. But fuck you if that's the case. There's a whole bunch of biological reasons why this is bullshit. Like, I'm not even gonna go into it. I don't see the need to go into it. They clearly fucking didn't. So why should we spend any time actually refuting the argument when it's clearly just dog shit?
Yeah, and maybe we can be in keeping with the court in not allowing any trans people to make that argument, you know.
Yeah, I will get on to the state of the way that this was put forward. The thing that really fucked me off when I seen this, other than the fact that, why have you done this? And, you know, all the worst people are going to love this shit, and all, like, anyone fucking normal is going to be either outraged at the least or hurt by it at the worst, was the statement from one of the judges that said, "We counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another."
And nobody
My brother
did.
in Christ, why was this brought in the first place?
Well, quite,
you fool, you rube.
But, you know, this is a point that they were making on Trash Future last week, which is to sort of say that so many people, you know, a huge problem with our politics in general and how we got here is that so many people are incapable of imagining that a sort of group or an individual or an organisation or publication that either they respect or that sort of looks like something they should respect is acting vexatiously. And I do think probably the people in the Supreme Court, I mean, maybe this whole thing was a stitch up, maybe the court was stuffed with sympathetic judges, or maybe, you know, the judges, were just equally incapable of sort of recognising or looking into what the motivations of the people bringing the case were. I mean, it doesn't really make that much difference either way. The outcome's the same. But, you know, I just think that's an interesting thing to think about how this has all been orchestrated. I think it's probably something we'll get onto a bit later.
But yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Something I think about a lot with the politics down here in Aotearoa as well, is that we've got a sort of media class and a sort of centrist political class that just do not understand that there are people acting in bad faith. They're still sitting with this, well, everyone just wants the best for everyone. We've just got different ideas of how to go about it, as some utterly deranged politician introduces the feed trans people into a wood chipper bill. And we go, well, obviously that's just responding to legitimate concerns. And it's like, for fuck's sake, guys. You know, it's not like, just take the thought train past the first station and go, maybe this is vexatious. Maybe this whole remove people from public life act that you're trying to bring in is actually bad somehow, rather than going, well, people must have these fears. The same 10 women and Graham Linehan keep turning up and saying they're very upset about this, so obviously it's legitimate.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing about, like, well, it's impossible to have a normal conversation about this, and it's like, fuck your normal conversation. Do you know what I mean? One side is like just screaming for the oppression and death of people, and the other side is like, maybe don't do that. You know, there's not a conversation there to be had. Like,
no,
it's so infuriating because like a lot of the people who just go, well, you know, there's concerns on both sides, wouldn't like, or I hope Like, do you know what I mean? Like, maybe fucking wouldn't entertain the same arguments about, like, so many other oppressed classes, but maybe they would. Maybe they're just that fucking obnoxious, do you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
you're already
maybe,
seeing... You're already seeing the group that do seem to be celebrating victory already sort of pushing to campaign in the same way for the safety of white women, which is an incredible turn up for the books. I mean, who could have possibly seen that coming?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it didn't, it wasn't, it was what, like, less than a week from the Supreme Court judgment, from them getting everything they wanted, from smoking a cigar on their yacht, which is a totally normal thing that the average women do all the time, I believe. I mean, I wouldn't know, seeing as now, according to the Supreme Court, I am neither of these things. But at like less than a week, and they're like, right, the struggle continues against the pernicious foreigner, and you're like, these people are at some point, you'd hope, if it wasn't for the fact that they're so useful to the global fascism project, at some point you would hope that someone would have an intervention and go, right, that's enough. That's enough Supreme Court judgments in your favour. You've won now. You can rest.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Alison Pearson in the Telegraph pivot very quickly to anti-white racism is embedded in the NHS as much as trans rights. Within days. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, they just can't not be on broadcast ever. These fucking people, they have no way to take in information that isn't like just a set level of you have absolutely won and you will keep winning forever. They have to get that constant reassurance that everything is going their way and they are correct to demand and want what they've got.
It's the same animus that drives the entire right wing these days, which is that like they just want to be liked for being a fucking like reprehensible dickhead.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing we can withhold from them. So, you know.
Yeah. Unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, and we are born haters. And it's this insane, it's this bizarre sort of psychology of these people, where it's not enough to get everything that they want, and it's not enough to grind another community into the dust, but they have to get plaudits for it. They have, like, Graham Linehan has to have his wife call him back. You know, like they just, and at some point, and I say, you know, this is not a professional opinion, but it comes from a professional place. Like, at some point, these people, one would hope, would develop enough self-awareness to go, maybe this is a me problem. Maybe the relentless licking of a jackboot and subjugating like a vulnerable community to the worst that we can throw at them isn't making me happy. Is this something that maybe I need to look inside myself to sort? Or
well, I mean, it's the British media, so don't hold your breath. Yeah. I appreciate that self-awareness is something of a rare commodity in most places, but it's just and this is the thing saying earlier about this need for civil debate is you can't have a conversation. Like, there's so many conversations, and I've said this before, and it drives me up the wall. There's so many conversations we can have about the role that gender plays in our society. There's so many incredible, rich, subtle, nuanced conversations about what does it mean to have a very gendered society when now we've been pushing back against that for generations. What does sport look like when we take this stuff out? And I think these are all useful conversations to have, but we can't have them because we're too busy listening to the same swivel-eyed columnists like banging on about the one time that they were forced to use a toilet in Tesco and there was a woman there who was a bit tall and how that scared them. And you can't, there's no conversation to have because there's no point they make that is coherent. Yeah, you know, at its heart, I've said this, but the transphobic machine has got no horsepower to it. It's a clown car going round in circles. It's the same 15 people who are just scaring themselves with this imaginary creature, but they're just somehow managing to make it everybody else's problem. And to the point where,
if you told me 5 years ago that we were going to end up with a Supreme Court judgment that somehow manages to make me unwelcome in every space and is like, it's got all of these other organisations rubbing their hands with glee about how they can introduce toilet bans or whatever, I would have gone, that's a bit much, isn't it? Surely it's not going to be that bad. And yet here we are. It's like the worst, most pessimistic outcome just seems to keep happening. And I would really like to be wrong on that at some point. I don't know where this ends other than badly.
Yeah.
Something like this has been in the post for about 10 years, I think, possibly even longer. I mean, Ross, you just sort of talked about the terms of quote-unquote discussion in mainstream media. And the whole point of my own mainstream media project was to change those terms of discussion, to move the conversation on from are these identities valid? No. Which was sort of how it was constantly framed in The Guardian, in particular in the 2000s. And to say, well, look, what are trans people's concerns in terms of housing, employment, safety, healthcare? What are the state of these things? What is it like to live as a trans person? And also to, sort of try and break down the assumption that a trans public figure would only be capable of or interested in talking about gender, and indeed talking about gender through the lens of their own identity. And I mean, I did that as a sort of Trojan horse to bring other types of trans politics and voices into the mainstream. And for about 3 years, I would say, between sort of 2010 and 2013, I was doing that. There were groups like On Road Media and Trans Media Watch, various other LGBT groups liaising with various kind of public bodies and institutions to try and make them more trans inclusive or to bring more trans voices into the media. And the progress here was always very, very slow. And it would frequently be punctuated by something like, I don't know, that objectionable Julie Burchill article in The Observer, which was just wall-to-wall slurs. It was so bad that The Observer unpublished it later in the day, and then Toby Young immediately republished it, and I think The Telegraph. And we all had to hear about how Julie Burchill had been so cruelly silenced that she'd had the same column published in 2 different national newspapers on the same day. And, the trans teacher Lucy Meadows, who took her own life, like not long after Richard Littlejohn published a column about her in the Daily Mail. So even at what sort of in hindsight looks like this kind of high point of trans representation and mediation, and, was the sort of state of affairs that possibly provoked these people into regrouping in order to first kind of exclude the handful of trans voices who'd managed to find like a very loose foothold at the bottom of the media rung. What now looks like a kind of golden age was in fact, always kind of frustrating and institutionally stifled. I do have an awful lot more to say about this, but I don't know how much I should say for reasons of time more than anything else. But, I and many others tried to reason with these people and tried to maybe sort of talk them away from what appeared to be kind of radicalization, at considerable cost to my own reputation and mental health, quite frankly, because I had a lot of people saying, look, you shouldn't be working with these publications, they're bad for us. I mean, in hindsight, I both think they were probably right, but also that just vacating the media field was a pretty big strategic mistake. Very few battles are won by like just vacating a battlefield. Fairly obvious, really. But sort of trying to explain to cultural gatekeepers, shall we say, editors in particular, about the kind of imbalance where I would spend years sort of revealing everything about my own life, with my face attached to it, in order to try and sort of break down stereotypes and, produce more sort of light and understanding on a topic that had not really been accorded it very much, and spend years doing that and giving away all these very personal things that I couldn't get back because editors insisted that the only thing people were interested in reading about us was these very personal stories, could then be undermined by just like one anonymous commentator publishing sort of columns that started off by talking about the new McCarthyism that targeted, brave critics of gender ideology. And then would do things like attack trans people for constantly talking about their own transitions. It's like, well, that's kind of all we've been allowed to do, actually. We'd like to do something else. And pointing out how kind of unfair and unbalanced that was, and getting absolutely nowhere with it. And that was the point where I really stood down from writing for what I think we would call mainstream centre-right publications about this stuff, because it was just pointless. And of course, those people got further radicalised during the Corbyn period, and both the Corbyn project and the trans rights movement in this country, have been fatally or severely undermined by the same people in the same way. This sort of group of kind of not particularly numerous, but politically quite influential, upper middle-aged and middle class now if they weren't, when they grew up. People with a kind of animus against the young, a sort of determination to not acknowledge their own role in producing an increasingly difficult set of circumstances to live under in this country. And, a sort of use of the media to smear and undermine opponents, followed by a sort of vexatious use of official bodies and institutions, notably, I would say, the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And indeed, this court case and the report into Labour anti-Semitism, I think, worked in largely the same way. They were dangled over the heads of their targets for years. They produced a sort of a final outcome or a report that was nowhere near as conclusive or as kind of damning as the people pushing for it wanted it to be, but then they just pretend that it said the thing they wanted it to say anyway. In the Labour case that, Corbyn's Labour was worse than the Nazis. In this case that, trans people should be effectively excluded from all parts of public life. And then immediately acted accordingly before there could be any sort of like legal or real kind of social challenge to it. So I think there are a lot of parallels there. And, as somebody who moved from, let's try and change mainstream media representation of trans people by working within it, straight to, let's try and fight austerity through the Labour Party. Like, this has not been a particularly kind of nourishing or energising 15 years for me.
No, that's entirely fair, yeah.
Fuck this country, honestly.
Like, I sink the whole fucking island, return to Doggerland.
I want to take this opportunity, Juliet, to thank you for your years of service in the media trenches, because, as someone who wasn't out at that point, there was that brief glimmer of hope when I was watching yourself and a few brave others trying to change the conversation and being monstered for it. And I've had similar experiences when I've talked to mainstream media here in New Zealand. We had a couple of years ago, we had Kelly Jean Keane Minshall.
Oh God, yeah.
Posey Parker rocked up on her Unite the Right, Protecting Women tour, and there was our government at the time barred her entry. There was a very well-funded appeal on that, and then she was let in. We went to judicial. Like there was a whole process. Like the crowdfunder to get a judicial review on this decision, which I think is astonishing. And she turned up anyway, and there was a massive protest. And this was the one where she got tomato juice spilled on her, which is akin to being publicly beheaded.
Yeah,
if you're both strong and weak as Posey Parker is, again. This is one of these examples of the massive gap between the sort of transphobic political machine and real people. Where this is, we are not a big country. We are there's 5 million of us and change, and we're a relatively conservative country for all we like to talk about it, but there were thousands of people turned up to this counter demo. I attended counter demo. I live down here in the South Island, which has got a population of like Bradford, I think, if that. And there were massive counter demos in Dunedin and Christchurch. I attended both. there was a real showing. And I think there's a lot of people out there, and I think it's the same in Britain as well, where the vast majority of people actually just don't give a shit. But the people that do, in the worst possible way, just have access to all the mics. And I did a little bit of media work around that. I figured that I was old enough and ugly enough and sort of like work-relatedly like insulated enough to be able to do that. And the death threats were almost immediate. The doxing happened very quickly. The formal complaints made to my professional body as well, where they managed to thread that needle of writing 3 pages about how I was an existential threat to humanity and didn't use either my first name or pronoun throughout, which is just, you know, credit to their crimes against grammar, I guess. But it was a horrendous time, and it was a real, for me, again, as you said, that trying to do in good faith, that trying to show that, yes, we are more than just we're more than just spilling our guts on these very personal things. But I was like, I want you to see that we are also parents, and that we are, you know, please see this shred of humanity. And the response from these bad faith actors was to threaten to burn my house down. You know, it's just, well, I mean, what do you say to that? And they will look at someone saying, could you not threaten to behead my child? And the death threat is like, these are both the same. This is not a civil debate. You should both be a bit more civil. And it's like, I've had to install new locks in my house. You know, like this is, you know, these people sleep safe in their beds at night, and they're like scaring themselves with this, like, again, this invisible threat. And
I mean, the mold will get them in the end, but yeah.
You know, like we've got a non-binary MP here who has been subject to a horrendous hate campaign that was boosted by our Deputy Prime Minister, by the way, and I will get onto that cunt in a fucking second, believe me. But this young person, they've got a kid. There was like they had captioned a post on Instagram from years before they became an MP. This got fanned by one of our transphobes, I'll not mention because she's very litigious, and this MP, Benjamin Doyle, ended up going into hiding, police protection. There's a threat. They reckon the likelihood of them getting physically attacked is like 25% or something. And I say, this is not a country where that happens. And our Deputy Prime Minister let it happen. And it's deranged. And you still had both sidesism. You still had, well, this isn't very reasonable, is it? And it's like, our local Nazis are putting up wanted posters with this poor bastard's face on it. Like, what the fuck do you want here?
Yeah. I mean, that's just the media end of it as well that fans that shit. That's not even the actual politicians when you get into those bastards. I know you mentioned the fucking Deputy PM that was fucking specifically indicted, but over here, holy shit, the amount of, like, the hard pivot that we have had over the last... Theresa May was in favour of self-ID, and that was like a kind of whatever position not 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then now you've got Wes Streeton, who, like, has been delivered more child coffins than any state I can think of. Like, it's fucking ridiculous.
There was a man who was assigned ham at birth, wasn't he?
500 votes, man. I mean, like, 500 votes from getting him out. If he had been beaten by Liam Mohammed in that election, you would have heard me from fucking Neptune, Mike.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, oh God. I mean, also, maybe you saw, but The Guardian were doing a live blog about all of this today, and they mentioned, Theresa May having that what's seen as a fairly milquetoast position in 2017, and then saying, how did we get from there to here in such a short space of time? There's a thesis to be written about this. And it's like, and it would have the fucking hot dog man on the front.
I mean, The Guardian
really would. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon did consultations on this, which just acted as lightning rods for these horrible people, and it spurred them to form more of these kind of pressure groups, whether it's the LGBT Alliance with their address on Tufton Street, or whether it's Sex Matters or For Women Scotland or Fair Play for Women. I mean, who knows where their money's coming from? It's a mystery. We'll never know. But they're clearly well organised. They're clearly well funded, and that's it really. And they built on the back of, like I said, a very conscious effort by certain editors at certain publications to make the media essentially a hostile environment for trans people. I mean, sort of another part of my own journalistic project was to write about other things, art, sport, music, politics, literature, whatever. And, the publications I'd written for basically made it so that the only way I could justify being part of them as a trans voice was to constantly argue with these people on the terms that they set. And I had no intention of doing that because it was boring and uncreative. And, I think about Toni Morrison talking about how part of the effect of racism is to make you waste your time, is to make you constantly have the same boring conversations with bad faith actors that stops you, kind of creating art or literature or whatever. And I think about that a lot. I think that's, a very astute observation about how this stuff kind of works. And I mean, another sort of observation about the way this stuff just gets subsumed into these sort of endless culture wars. I'm going to have problems with that kind of framing because, this stuff isn't just a diversion. It's not just a culture war. It's not primarily intended, I think, to, take the conversation away from, say, austerity, although, I think it is partly intended to do that, and that's certainly one of the effects of it. But another sort of, I think, thing they stumbled across as a tactic is to make the talking points so unbelievably stupid that anyone with half a brain would be embarrassed to take part in them. I mean, the one that really sticks with me was like Piers Morgan yelling about Mr. Potato Head's genitalia a few years ago. And I just thought, like, can you fuckers not hear yourselves? I mean, I know you can't, Piers.
Yeah.
But, in general, it's just a shame that the entire media discourse could have switched to Spanish to exclude him, like Jeremy Corbyn did with Hector Bellerin that time. But I mean, I don't speak Spanish, but I'd take it.
But that's it, isn't it? Like they're the ones that are setting the terms of engagement, but their terms of engagement are written by ChatGPT with a head injury. Like this, the correct answer to what is a woman is shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
and yet we're like, no, we must. This is a legitimate question that requires a lot of endless thinking, and it's like every single point these people have makes no fucking sense. Like not absolutely no sense. So you're there, as you said, Juliet. Like they're setting the terms of the engagement, and you're trying to fight a sort of intellectual battle when there's a gas leak in the room. It's just you can't argue with them because the points, like their arguments are just incomprehensible.
Yeah,
and yet they are propped up and buoyed up by people who listen to, I don't know, was it the fucking Staniland question or whatever? Like they really like to sound like they know what they're talking about, and they get all these people nodding along going, "Oh, that's a brilliant idea. I'd never thought of it before." And you're like, "Yeah, because it doesn't make any fucking sense." Like, again, do you hear yourselves?
I mean, again, let's not dwell on this too much, but the sort of talking point about like men transitioning into women so they can go in the women's bathrooms and assault people, and like not once have I heard anyone in mainstream media just be like, are you on fucking glue? Like, that's preposterous.
Yeah.
Like the waiting list at the moment is like 7 years or something for the gender identity clinic appointment and surgery. It takes, you'd have to like come out to all your family and friends and colleagues and live as a woman on the street and deal with all the like transphobia that comes with that. You'd have to wait like several months just for like an initial psychiatric assessment after getting referred by your GP. Then you'd have to like go through the entire sort of process, hormonally, surgically, everything else, and then presumably get the gender recognition certificate at the end, which also takes ages and is quite difficult because you'd feel that you couldn't go in the women's bathroom without the certificate. And then it would just turn out, I could have just taken a fucking mop and bucket.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, there is a force field around a lot of women's bathrooms that doesn't let you in unless you've got a gender recognition certificate and a special code that you get when you complete the gender identity clinic.
I hate to tell you this, but they actually had them out with a Weatherspoons uniform these days.
And this, and this is it. Like, we're all sitting here going, "This is extremely fucking obvious," but you get the most credulous rubes who, you know, and they're just like, "Wow, that's real Joe Rogan-esque. Wow, that's incredible. I'd never thought of."
Well, that's why this has been so effective on.
Follow-up question.
That's why this has been so effective on Starmer's cabinet, because it's nothing but credulous fucking rubes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little.
I just want to say there that, like, Ross is absolutely spot on with the about the answer when someone asks you to define, like, a woman. The answer is shut the fuck up. Like, I've seen a lot of people the past week trying to sort of win, like, point out the flaws in the logic here, and all the transphobes say this, but wouldn't that mean that? That's ridiculous. They're such fools. And they don't care.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
They don't care, and you do yourself a disservice by trying to fucking logic them out of their stupid fucking position. Just tell them to fuck off. If someone comes, if you find yourself cornered by some, like, dipshit yelling about large gametes, just tell them to go fuck themselves.
That sign at the fucking co-op, man. I mean, Jesus.
That was ridiculous.
The most embarrassing thing since that Wolverhampton Wanderers fan turned up with a sign saying, "You've let us down again," which he clearly prepared at home before the game.
I really feel like, at heart, deep down, if you're the person who's taking a day off work to stand on court steps with a sign saying "large gametes," in your heart, you've lost.
But they fucking haven't. That's the problem.
But that, yeah. It's, yeah. They're winning in that they're making life much worse for absolutely everybody. But it's just, yeah. This is the cognitive dissonance is something that I really struggle with. It's like, I look after my kid. I go to work. I'm a member. Like, I live and work in a relatively, like, conservative part of a relatively conservative country, and have a very happy and nice life down here. I wouldn't say that I'm, like, 100% out, because I don't feel that I have to be. It's that private versus secret type thing. But I'm living the kind of life that drives these people absolutely insane. I am happy and fulfilled. So go fuck yourselves, guys. But and then I turn on the news and see, like, the most, like, philosophically stunted humans standing on the steps of the Supreme Court because there's been this very sort of vaguely worded bit of legislation which they are now going to use to make the lives of my community immeasurably harder. And I'm just like, I think part of the thing here is how fixated they are on making life worse for other people. And it's not just transphobes, it's fascists everywhere. I think we're all getting into that stage of feeling that fatigue and recognizing that this is going to be the life's work, is trying to stop these bastards, or at the very least slow them down. And it's exhausting, because for the vast majority of us, we're just like, I'm just a little guy. We're just people who've got, like, problems to have, but we're dealing with a fascist sort of front here who is on a total war footing. They are obsessed. 4 women Scotland sitting up at night foaming at the mouth thinking about genitals, like it's very difficult to counter people who've got that level of maniacal thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
they're all at it.
They think about trans stuff far more than I do, and this is my fucking job. I mean, like,
yeah.
No, exactly. I wanted to run through some of the knock-on effects of this. We all know, but I think it's important to kind of highlight this for maybe people who aren't aware of, like, how far and overreaching this might be. And, well, not how it might be. It itself is just some shit on some paper. The problem is how people start interpreting this, and unfortunately, all of the worst cunts have all of the power at the minute, meaning that it's actually all very, very bad. So, the baseline of this is trans women who hold a gender recognition certificate cannot now be seen as women by the Equality Act, is the kind of baseline of this. The whole, oh, well, it's actually fine. You'll be covered by the gender reassignment end. Shut the fuck up. Like, that's not the point. That's never been the point. That's not the issue. This has now created a whole series of fucking problems. The first one of the biggest ones, was like hours, if not minutes. I'm not even sure what the timeline was on this. Was the British Transport Police saying, oh, we need to update our policy so we have a new interim strip search policy where we can have male cops will do strip searches on trans women.
It was the next day, I think.
Was it as late as that?
I
thought it was sooner. That's still technically a matter of hours, so I'm right.
Yeah,
Either way.
I went to bed just as the Supreme Court thing came out, which is a shame because I'd really hoped that I would miss it and have a few more hours peace.
Yeah.
And then woke up to the British Transport Police just being like...
Yeah, just... Well, this is it. How do these officers know? Because you can't ask, do you have a gender recognition certificate? That is actually covered by the Equalities Act still. So, they have to go on vibes. Okay, what happens if they fuck that up? Like, what is the risk level there for them as workers even? And I hate to call them workers, but if you think about it in these terms, like, that is a risk that the employer has to therefore take into account. And they've obviously done this because this is the interim policy. They've said, fuck it. Because guess what? We can always tell. Like, that's absolutely the fucking way that's going about their heads. Oh, we can always tell, so it's fine. No, you're going to fuck this up. But then, it's the British Transport Police. Who expects anything good to come for them? But it's just, it's a new avenue, and them being fucking shit.
I think it was interesting watching the response to the court judgment and lots of people saying, look, don't panic, it's not going to be that bad.
Yeah.
Here's what it means and here's what it doesn't. And it's like, again, it doesn't take into account the bad faith of you have a lot of institutions who will look at something like this and go, what is the worst possible way that we can interpret this? And we'll go for it. Like, it's not people are not going to be normal about this. They're not going to be rational. Mm-hmm. They're not going to look at this and go, well, actually, this leaves a lot of room for interpretation, and there's all of these other acts and things, and they're going to look at it and go, right, it's open season on being a piece of shit.
Yeah, 100%. The big knock-on thing with this is the single-sex services and separate spaces. Mm-hmm. The judgment included a small list, but not an exclusive list, of changing rooms, hostels and medical services as part of its whole argument about why biological sex should be the prime factor in deciding what sex means. So, that means that, like, trans women cannot access those spaces if they are specifically for women, that's fucked. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Where are they supposed to go? The EHRC cunts, they're going to provide some new guidance on these single-sex spaces, so don't worry about that. And the NHS has already been threatened with being sued into fucking oblivion if it doesn't update how it does separate sex wards.
And there's the model there with the fucking Office for Students that Toby Young was involved with, suing the University of Sussex for not just endlessly rolling a red carpet out for Kathleen Stock.
Yeah.
I mean, just a little quick note on that. I was doing my PhD at the University of Sussex in the same department as Kathleen Stock, and I never heard a fucking thing from her or about her until she got cancelled. So, there's fun. Sorry, just wanted to get that off my chest, but yeah.
Reverse cancelled.
Yes, quite.
The other thing about this as well is that Labour has immediately done what Labour does, and it has taken the illogical extremes to the extremes and decided that single-sex spaces absolutely includes toilets, which, again, if you can put up a sign that says a male member of staff may clean these toilets, and that's fine, it's not a single-sex space then, is it? That's not how those things function. Like, they are legally distinct things. But Bridget Phillipson came out on Radio 4 and said, yeah, actually, all toilets are now subject to biological sex, which is a fully insane thing to say.
Yeah. This
like,
is...
in any world, that's insane.
There's a sentence that's given me psychic damage.
This is the real sort of problem, the main thing of why because a lot of people said, like, you know, the Supreme Court themselves were like, oh, but, you know, we said this, but like we want to stress that we still like trans people. They're still protected under this like Equalities Act, and we don't think you should, you know, please don't gloat about this. And people have said, oh, it won't really change anything because they've still got the protections. They're just equal but different now and all this shit. And it's like, yeah, but the problem is this judgment is a starting pistol for all the worst fucking dickheads in the country to immediately rush out and just say what they reckon. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, we reckon the law means this now. And nobody in any position of authority is going to give any pushback on that at all, you know? Like,
yeah, and it emboldens people to say, well,
if only we had some sort of human rights lawyer as a prime minister.
Well, quite, or any sort of equality and human rights commission. But it basically it emboldens people to say, well, the law should be changed if it's not what I want, and it emboldens people to change the law to make our lives as difficult as possible, because the judgment itself didn't change that much. I mean, all it really did was just reiterate what the Equality Act 2010 already said. But as Ross said, it's done in entirely bad faith, and it's a starting shot for all of the worst people in Britain to just have open season on trans and non-binary people, basically.
Yeah. And I saw Sex Matters, which is, in my opinion, just a fucking hate group, but even if you don't take my opinion for it, they're just a random herd of dickheads with no authority whatsoever in any field. They're not a government body. They're not a legal entity. They're not, you know what I mean? They're not experts on anything. And since the judgment, I've seen them publish like guidance, and it just claims like the most outrageous shit ever. You know, like, I mean, when I was looking into this the other day and making notes, they were claiming basically essentially the law requires everyone like to be a TERF now. Right? You're not allowed to tell trans people they're valid and say trans women are women, trans men are men. That's out of order. You've got to say now that like trans women are men. Gender neutral bathrooms are basically illegal now. Like, organizations shouldn't try to like install those to give trans people a place to go. Companies should now like out trans employees was another one they were saying. And then,
Jesus fucking Christ!
Since I like read this, I saw another quote more recently that was being passed around where it was they were basically saying that, like, as an employer, you should really be aware that under the Equality Act, there's no requirement. In fact, it's frowned upon to keep someone in employment if they're a danger to their like co-workers, or like, whether that be because they're a sex pest or some kind of pervert or an exhibitionist or whatever. And then they go on to say, and the medical evidence shows that like trans identifying people have like all these paraphilias, and they listed off all this the shit about orogynephilia and everything. And it's like, frankly, they shouldn't be allowed to in a normal society. There would be consequences for that kind of shit. Do you know what I mean? Because they're just basically making up the worst fucking shit possible and hoping no one will call them on it. And again, no one with any authority is going to fucking call them on it. So, there'll be people who read that and go, all right, cool. I'm glad I've seen what the ruling actually means now. Because that's how the world works nowadays. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what objective reality is or what the law says or anything like that. It's what gets shouted the most on Facebook by "you're insane, ant." Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But
this is part of that. I mean, we're seeing this in so many places now, aren't we? There'll be a judgment, or there'll be something like this that comes out, and very, very quickly you will have groups like this.
Yeah.
And this goes for, for example, here in Aotearoa, you've got like Indigenous rights and various other things, and you will have these very bad faith groups come out very quickly with some very slickly made guidelines, or here's how to interpret this, and it is always in the worst way possible. It is always in the way that is extremely exclusionary and dangerous, and it leaves organizations that actually don't have time to become legal scholars or endocrinologists or sociologists or whatever, who will look at this while, you know, like the marginalized groups are fucking scrambling to like pass around the $50 GoFundMe to try and get something out in time. They'll look at the slickly produced stuff and go, well, I guess that's just how it is then. I don't want to get into trouble. And they all, you know, their stuff is really nicely produced and has come out really quickly and has all these, you know, references on it. So this must be what we do now. And it's so hard to counter that. And again, it's this, we've spent years, and a lot of other people, and credit to them, have tried much harder than I have over the years, like, to try and counter things, again, in good faith. It's that, no, here's what the law actually says. No, here's what your rights actually are. No, here's what the evidence says about X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't matter, because they will just, like, run their steamroller in purely driven off vibes and just say, this bit of research that I have just made up by Storm Fasherson says that trans men are actually descended from crabs.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck do you do with that?
It's a macrocosm of, like, you're more reading the fucking paper. Do you know what I mean? And, like, just believing everything in it, because if it wasn't true, they wouldn't be allowed to print it in the paper. You know what I mean? That's that kind of, like, that kind of attitude to it. And the thing is, it happened before with, I'm not 100% sure I know the name of the person who was involved in the tribunal, but there was a tribunal for some turf, and I think the tribunal, like, upheld that they were right to be fired because they had been transphobic to their colleagues, but they also mentioned, like, the tribunal also mentioned that they did, like, you know, the turf in question raised this point in their defense that, well, you can't prosecute me for thinking that, like, transphobic thoughts. And the court went, like, the tribunal went, no, yeah, you're right. You can't be, like, you know, you can't get in trouble for just thinking these things. And that literally everywhere, instantly, turfs were putting about everywhere that, like, turfism was a protected belief. That was the phrase you always saw. Protected belief.
That was the Maya
like,
Forstater case, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I wasn't 100% on that, but yeah. And it's like, yeah, it's just protected belief. And then some people saw protected belief and misread that. And you saw turfs, like, then progress to saying that they were actually protected minority. Like, you know what I mean? I've seen people make that argument online, and it's like, no, you fucking are.
I mean, they're definitely a minority.
Like, you can just say anything online.
They are a minority.
If you've ever seen any of their protests,
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
they are absolutely a minority, but it is not a hate crime to, like, call them dickheads. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's not.
As much as they might want it to be. Yeah.
Speaking of dickheads, Keir Starmer came out to say that he was very glad that the court had told him what a woman is. So
fuck that guy so much.
I know. Like, honestly, it's amazing how every single day him and Wes Streeton remain head to head.
And guess which author has come out and said, "Look, that's not enough." Who could have possibly anticipated that the person who once created a character who was the bass player in a grime band would not be happy? I think about the phrase "bass player in a grime band" about once a week. It's so good.
That's not that can't even be top 5 for the, like, worst things she's written as well, can it?
Well, we mentioned this already, but Karen Smith, a Labour MP, said that the Tories should apologise for Theresa May's pro-self-ID position, which, come on, Tiff.
Literally the very last thing Theresa May should apologise for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes without saying, really, but I'm going to say it anyway because I really like saying it. Fuck the Labour Party. If you are a member, a supporter, anyone doing literally anything that aids or abets them in any, you are a collaborator. You are a collaborator. There's no other word for it. You are a collaborator with fascism. Fuck you. Stop what you're doing now and don't do it again. This party needs to be destroyed. And while we're at it, fuck the SNP as well. They have now taken what the Supreme Court said and went, okay, we'll do the thing, but also they have doubled down and said we will absolutely not be attempting any more gender reform. Fuck these Quisling cunts. Do not vote for them. Do not support them. Do not give them money. Do not assist them in any way, shape or form. That party also, another fucking scum hive of liberalism, must be destroyed. Fuck them. If you absolutely need to vote for someone, you can vote the Greens, I guess.
Yeah. Well, while we're on talking about like fucking collaborators, obviously, fuck LGBT Labour, but also, I don't know if anyone saw there was an account on Blue Sky, Pride in Labour, and they did a post which I'm just gonna. It was a pic. They posted a picture of the protest in London over the weekend, and the text said, "Just a reminder that this was done in just over 2 days without a billionaire bankrolling the movement. We did this through solidarity and community. Say what you like about LGBTQIA plus people, but we know how to organise." And it's like, okay, but you are telling people to vote Labour, so go fuck yourselves. Their bio championing like LGBTQIA plus rights within the Labour Party. Fuck off. That's no use to anyone, is it really?
Yeah.
Quislings and collaborators, fuck them all.
I'm just gonna. We've mentioned like, you know, these groups that I will, like, you know what I mean. I will like say I definitely consider to be hate groups, like, you know, there's Sex Matters, For Women Scotland, and the LGB Alliance. I fucking hate the LGB Alliance so much. I can't wait until they pivot to being the LG Alliance.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that next move from them.
I mean, you know, comparisons to the 1930s, whatever you think of them, it's worth noting that, you know, the first thing the Nazis did when they got in was target Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science. You know, this is often read as being them targeting the homosexuals first, partly because, you know, the sort of differentiation between trans and gender and sexuality had not really sort of got far beyond sexological circles at that point. But the very first people the Nazis went for specifically were Hirschfeld's Institute of Sexual Science, because it was sort of doing research into gender identity, up to and including the first like gender confirmation surgeries. And they left the SA alone, which is full of the sort of like right-wing masculinist sort of homo nationalist led by Ernst Röhm, and, you know, sort of a certain type of reactionary gay man. Yeah, they left that until the Night of the Long Knives a year later. So, you know, who knows what's going to happen to the LGB Alliance in future. And indeed, any kind of gay and lesbian people who supported all of this. Well, who knows what will happen to them, but we'll see.
I think what's going to happen to the LGB Alliance is nothing, because I remain completely convinced that organisation is like 99% cishet people.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Have they ever campaigned for anything other than anti-trans stuff? Like once?
No, not that I've seen.
It's like we've got Speak Up for Women here, who campaign solely on the eradication of trans people. And that glorious day on Twitter when everything went a bit feral with the blue checks, and I changed my user ID to their picture and started a big long apology thread about how they've been focusing on the wrong thing, and they would absolutely start working on making life better for all women, and listed some legislation and things that was coming up, and some real like data on the plight of women here in Aotearoa. It was a glorious way to go out, comrades, but they were furious about that. And it's always funny watching bleakly funny watching organisations like this sort of claw back on, no, actually, we don't give a fuck about our horrendous rates of intimate partner violence, and we don't give a shit about the gender pay gap and everything else. We only care about trans people because we are Speak Up for Women. And yeah, just like they cannot help themselves.
Yeah. Just where we're talking about the LGB Alliance, focus on the L part of that. The court also managed to define what a lesbian is through this. And a lesbian is someone who is assigned female at birth, who is sexually oriented towards or attracted to people who are also assigned female at birth. So that then has the effect that although a cis lesbian could be in a relationship with a trans lesbian, you end up in a position where, according to this, they do not actually have any rights for discrimination, potentially, under the Equality Act. It's fucked. So not only have they managed to strip away a bunch of rights from trans people, they've also managed to strip away a whole bunch of rights away from cis people as well, which is great. And it's women. And three of the groups that written into this in a joint statement was the LGB Alliance, Scottish Lesbians, and the Lesbian Project. So congratulations to you on your hard fucking work there.
Sorry, I'm imagining Scottish Lesbians as being an offshoot of Scottish Widows. It's just a lesbian like wearing a big cape wandering through a forest or something. And this is it, right? It's the sign of a very healthy and normal society when they're putting into law what a lesbian is. You know, that's something, you know, like cultures only do that when they're very distressed.
Yeah, I'm not a scholar of any particular kind, but I don't think that needed to be defined in law.
It didn't. I mean, it's only technically defined in law through the lens of the Equality Act. It's not as if there's a bit of paper that now says a lesbian is, but this is how the Equality Act must now be read. So, in effect, yeah, like, the law is such bullshit. The concept of like having a bunch of stuff written down and having to do a bunch of hoops to figure out what things actually mean is stupid at the fucking first instance anyway. Like, but having to do these many hoops for this kind of logical twist is just fucked.
But again, it keeps coming back to like none of that. You're trying to make good faith, evidence-based arguments against people who are like, what we need to do is have a legally defined definition of a lesbian. Like that is not.
Yeah,
that is not. You're not dealing with sensible people here. Like someone legit sat up at night and went, I need the Supreme Court to tell me if what a lesbian is. Like get like literally do anything else. Else.
Yeah. Yeah. On the kind of on the LGB Alliance again, they actually said the ruling confirms that the words gay and lesbian refer to same-sex sexual orientation and makes it absolutely clear that lesbians wishing to form associations of any size are lawfully entitled to exclude men, whether or not they possess a GRC. Like, what do you fucking... What's your point? Like, again, this is a prime example of why there is no point fucking trying to interrogate where they're actually coming from. Like, the cruelty is the point.
Yeah,
there's nothing else
and
to
all,
it. Like,
all that's new is the sort of
is.
greater level of vocal cruelty, because the fucking Equality Act already said all of this anyway.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. The whole point of having this stuff written in a very specific way is specifically so that you can just point it at a certain group. That's all that they've done here, is they've weaponized the Equality Act. It's just fucked. However, like we were saying near the start, a lot of these people are not happy despite getting what they fucking got. There was that tweet from Julie Bindle. I feel lower than a snake's armpit the past couple of days.
Oh, that's very sad.
Specific. Yeah, that was a reply to a tweet that read, after the Supreme Court ruling, I feel more depressed about how appallingly gender-critical women have been and are treated. I felt the same after the Cash review came out. It's like you have to hold it all in, not think about it, just get through this bit, then the next. You got what you wanted, why are you crying?
Again, because the phone call is coming from inside the house.
Mm. Like, well, yeah, because no phone calls are coming from outside.
Unless it's Graham Linehan again. But this is it. Like this is, in therapeutic terms, if I had someone who I was working with who was like, I will be happy when I buy a house. I will be happy when I buy a car. I will be happy when I get X, Y, and Z. And they keep coming back to me and they're saying, this is not why am I still feeling so sad? And I would, gently suggest to them in that the least patronising tone I could find that perhaps it was not all of the other things that needed fixed. That this is very much a them problem, and this culture of real sort of grievance at wanting to squash others, wanting to be right, but not just that, but wanting to be adulated for that. Graham Linehan out there being like, I am sitting by my phone eating my carbonara for one, waiting for all of my old friends to call, which they surely will any second, to apologise to me. And it's like, the idea that this is not popular and that people don't like them for it creates such a psychic wound in these people, but they haven't got the self-awareness to go, maybe the fact that nobody talks to me and everyone thinks I'm a dickhead is because I'm saying and doing very bad things that hurt people. And it's like, again, as I said, to sort of get them to the point of developing a bit of self-awareness of people will stop avoiding you when you stop yelling at them about large gametes in the fucking street, or in J.K. Rowling's case, like cornering some poor terrified guy and yelling at him about kinky queer sex and stuff, when I'm going to assume he was just there to read the meter or something, because I cannot imagine some guy being in J.K. Rowling's house if he was not being paid to be there.
No, that guy deserved everything he got. He was the bass player in a grime band.
Oh, that was... He was the bass player in the grime band.
He was there to take the dead bees off a windowsill.
Yeah. Molden.
I just want to...
It's amazing he could hear anything through the hazmat suit because of that fucking black mold.
Yeah.
I just want to say two things about those tweets you read out, David. The first is, I love that you put the way you put the emphasis on that there, so that you said appallingly gender critical women. And the second one is the Julie Bindle tweet about being lower than I don't think we should, the people at large should be taking biology lectures from someone who thinks snakes have armpits.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we mentioned fucking Linehan. He got a little shout out. I'm presuming this is a reply to J.K. Rowling. You and Acklin are rock. Thank you for the support. Sadly, even though I've defended her constantly throughout all this, J.K. pretends I don't exist. But thank you for the mention, sent at 25 past midnight the day after.
All right, fun little story here from a friend I saw the other day, who shares a name with a not particularly prominent TERF, and so got accidentally invited, I think in 2017, into a secret Facebook group where they were organising, and in response to the consultations, and got kicked out fairly quickly after they realised that she wasn't the person they thought she was, but stayed long enough to see that they were sort of debating the fact that they needed a public figure to sort of help push their cause. Because Graham Linehan was just doing more harm than good, quite frankly. So that was when they sort of started targeting Rowling, and obviously eventually kind of got her over. But yeah, this sort of awareness even 8 years ago that like Graham Linehan had lost it far too much, and had maybe kind of cooked his transphobia so much that he'd bombed. Google Graham Linehan transphobia cooked and bombed for more information.
I've got another tweet from him, also from the day after. Today I'm thinking of my ex-brother-in-law, James Serafinovich, who helped break up my family. He didn't have the guts to stand up... who helped break up my family because he didn't have the guts to stand up for his wife, sister and daughter. Hope you're having a shitty week, James.
Not as shitty as you.
And this is going to be the best week of his fucking life as well. It's only downhill from here.
I know. It brings me such joy to know that cunt in particular is miserable as fuck.
What else is he going to be, though?
I know.
Yeah, no, that's it.
He wants to get himself down to the Iceland in HMP Auckland.
Well, they sell carbonara, right?
For one.
I don't think there's anything else. Well, there's probably a few things that we've missed, to be fair, but in the interest of time, we'll start moving off this now, but there are some... With everything bad that happens, there's something, like, definitely not equally good, by God, but at least slightly hopeful that comes off the back of it. We've had Stonewall and Amnesty International both saying that, rightly, there are implications to all of this.
Concerning implications, they said, didn't they?
Yeah, well, yeah, understatement of the fucking year.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they're right, and the fact that they are actually openly saying that and disagreeing with it immediately after is a good sign. And the protests that happened at very fucking short notice with incredible attendance all across the country, that was just lovely to see.
Yeah, I went to the one in London on Saturday, and I got there a bit late, but there are huge numbers of people there. I mean, the estimate said 20 to 30,000. Certainly, I saw lots of people, cis people, trans people, men, women, lesbians, gay men, straight people, pretty much the full range of humanity turning out for us. And, people were very angry and, in some extent scared, but there was so much defiance and so much joy, I mean, there was still a really sort of exuberance, maybe sort of taking it too far, but there was a real delight in the number of people who turned out, and like I said, the sheer sort of range of people who turned out, and there was so much kind of humor and love. It was a really beautiful thing to be a part of. I mean, I mentioned earlier how few people turn out for these TERF demos, and I did walk into one of their shitty picnics once in Hyde Park, which they maybe hold every Sunday. I don't know. I who can say? And there are about 20 of them. The Orkney Islands, with 2 days' notice, got 50 people out to protest this shit. So, that is genuinely encouraging. And I think if the Labour Party or the Supreme Court or any of these fucking horrible astroturfed groups that we've been talking about think this is the end of it and that they've won a decisive victory, then they really have got another fucking thing coming. We survived the Nazis and we'll survive these cunts.
Yeah, I think I saw someone on Blue Sky talking about this, where it was just like they cannot win. They cannot, like, they could round us all up and put us into camps tomorrow and exterminate us, and tomorrow there would be more trans people. Like, it's not. Yeah. It's not something that they can win at. Even they can win all these battles. They are horrible people. Like I say, I'm acutely aware of the effect, like the sort of the fridge hum, the sort of background 3.6 Rontgens of trauma that trans people are taking every day from this bullshit. Like it's a real, it's so energy sapping and degrading, and it fucking sucks. Like I said, I cannot, like, I would love to come back on here at some point and talk about virtually anything else, but we have to talk about this stuff, and I appreciate that you've got trans people on to talk about it. But that, like, it's exhausting and it's sapping, and you're up against like this sort of zombie-like total war of these people who really cannot stop thinking about trans people, like absolutely obsessed. And but we will, like I say, like we will endure because we always have, and I think that's one of the things that upsets them so much. Is seeing other people have happiness and fulfilling lives in a way that they will never ever experience, I think, is what absolutely twists these people around. And good.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it. Like, you can't kill an idea, which is like they've tried so hard to kill an idea, but what you cannot 100% definitely not kill is something which just happens. There have always been trans people. This is not an idea. Trans people are not some sort of, like, it isn't an ideology. It hasn't just sprouted up like fucking communism did, which has been quite unfortunately successfully fucking suppressed. Like, there have always been trans people, and through various stages in society they have been less accepted than now, more accepted than now, and in all sorts of fucking ways, places. this is a fucking fact of life. Trans people exist, and there's nothing that they can do that will ever prevent that. No matter how hard they try, no matter how fucking down to the bone they get with it, it's always going to be the case, and they'll never fucking win. So they should just give up.
But they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they won't, but they fucking should.
Damn right.
So yeah, just like a couple of shout outs. So first off is Nicola Coughlan. I hope I pronounced that right. Mm-hmm. She called the ruling disgusting, correctly, and then raised over $100,000 for a trans charity, and said that the new Harry Potter series could get fucked, which it can. That's right. Yeah. And I can't believe I'm going to have to do this, but shout out to the Vulpicide and kimono enthusiast Julian Mom and the Good Law Project. He's a fucking lib. I know. But the thing is, this is his area, and he's actually right on this. So fair play. You do not got to hand it to him for anything else, but on this shit, crack
No,
on.
I'd like to reiterate that because, so many people who 10 years ago, and particularly maybe 15 years ago, either were fairly on the fence about trans stuff or just weren't that bothered about it, or said, well, look, it's just a matter of personal autonomy, have completely lost their shit over it, and, taken up a position that is indistinguishable from Viktor Orban or Donald Trump or Kemi Badenoch or whoever. And I remember we talked about the weather calling Jolyon Maugham like the last liberal, because he is actually a liberal rather than one of these like centrist dickheads. And as such sort of runs to a sort of fairly consistent set of liberal ethical principles. They're not my ethical principles. And, in sort of economic terms, I think they're fairly useless. But, in terms of sort of social liberalism, that's the kind of socialism or communism that I want, is one that's socially liberal as possible. I think I do have to thank Jolyon Maugham for the work he's done on this, because, my approach to politics is not, primarily sort of procedural based or legalistic, but we do need some people who are doing that, because this stuff does do us a hell of a lot of damage. So, there are certain people on the more liberal end of the spectrum, like, say, Jolyon Maugham or Jane Fay from Transactional, who I've had plenty of disagreements with, particularly during the Corbyn period, but are in the right place on this subject. So I have to give them the kudos for that. So yeah.
Yeah, I know, 100% you do. Yeah, critical support, for sure. But on this, like, keep going.
Yeah, I think with Jolyon as well, he sort of presents this tantalizing alternate universe where, true liberals and centrists looked at transphobia and went, "Shut the fuck up." Like, it's this real, like, magical, like, lots of people who actually know things and are not completely brainwormed going, the trans panic has absolutely no basis in reality and is extremely dangerous. And it's interesting that he stands out, not just in a kimono and a baseball bat, but he stands out with saying this is bullshit, when so many other people are there listening to the most unhinged, nonsensical concepts that you've ever heard, going, wow, much to consider there. And you think, why couldn't more people have been doing that?
It's amazing that one of the better people now is Ian Dunt, because he is, actually opposed to this and thinks it's bad, which puts him above about 90% of his colleagues. And bless him, I did see him sort of saying, look, I will offer journalistic training to trans people. And I didn't have the heart to sort of like reply to him on my sparkling new Blue Sky account and say, well, look, quite a lot of people were writing for the media and doing training for trans people about 15 years ago. And we got like hounded out by people that you've been on podcasts with. And that's why there aren't any trans voices. It's not just kind of an unfortunate imbalance. It's been very deliberately engineered. And, that's the next step of liberal thought. But baby steps here. Jolyon is some way ahead of all the others. But, maybe some of them will get there. I mean, somebody was saying that this might be a kind of extinction burst for British turfery, and I wouldn't feel too confident about that. But maybe this is a sort of tipping point where a lot of people who, sort of fairly uncritically took on the barrage of transphobic stuff in the media, see what it's actually building up to, and do start to say, well, no, we're not fucking having this. I wouldn't feel too confident because, what has British politics been over the last 15 years or so, except a small handful of sort of influential and loathsome people with opinions that are wildly out of step with the majority of the British public, forcing them on us as to creating a situation where we don't really have any effective recourse against them. But who knows? There could be an outpouring of feeling against this stuff. And, maybe in 5 years' time, it won't look anywhere near as bad as it could. But then, maybe in 5 years' time, we'll have Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. Who fucking knows?
Yeah. And it's let people defect as well. I strongly believe that you have to. It's not necessarily the job of every marginalised person to be the long-suffering sage on the hill, but you have to let people get off the fascism train. Because otherwise there's a lot of people at the end of the line, and that's very, very bad for all of us. But,
it's tempting
I think
tempting to just yell, we fucking told you, and I have absolutely not been above doing so in the course of 5 years ago I wrote a piece for The Guardian which took about 3 months to get through the one sympathetic editor I could find who'd let me do it, who subsequently left, just saying like liberals need to support trans rights before it's too late. And now here we are. And, I really want to just take my little byline photo and the sort of Guardian, masthead, and just put the words, Juliet Jakes, I fucking told you. And, that can be this decade's contribution to the Guardian. But, it doesn't really help with sort of individuals. So, that's why I didn't go and yell at Ian Dunt, for example. But, it doesn't really help, I guess, to just scream at people that finally get it, that we told you so, because I think trans and non-binary people in Britain at this point, we do need all the help we can get. So I without wanting to sound like we should be grateful to people we maybe shouldn't have to be grateful for, that's where we are. So you have to play the land as it lays. But
I did see one graph, if we want to get into the data fucking side of things for a minute, which was social attitudes towards gay people before and after the introduction of Section 28. And the minute Section 28 gets slapped on, that line starts to go back up from the downward trend that was on. And I can only hope that this has a very similar effect, and people start actually asking, like, oh, so why are trans people supposed to be bad? Yeah. Why? And then hearing the absolute fucking shite that these cunts come out with and going, well, that's pish. No. Like, it only takes the vaguest amount of interrogation, and that's not to say, again, honest and frank debate, because, again, this is not a debate. Like, if we phrase this as the trans question, a few eyebrows more might be fucking raised. And, like, just people can see this stuff. Like, as easy as it is to, lean back on British public wrong about nearly everything, they do eventually get it. And sometimes having their face kind of rubbed in it a little bit does show them what's actually fucking happening. So I'm hopeful.
And I think you have to...
And I'd like to kind of end this piece on a bit of a hopeful note.
And what I would...
Just because we fucking have to.
What I would add as well is that, without wanting to be over-reliant on, like, the kids will save us, the split here is largely generational. You look at the handful of horrible dickheads like outside the Supreme Court, and they're all kind of in their older middle age. And then you go to, the demo, and there are a lot of very young people. And, this stuff does cut across ideologies, which has been a bit of a problem for us. You can find as much turfery in the Morning Star or the Observer as you can in the Times or the Telegraph. But, you can find younger people and even younger commentators. I mean, the one that struck me a while ago was like Tom Harwood, who is, horrendous on all sorts of issues, but just says, I don't understand why everyone is so worked up about trans people, and it's just a matter of personal freedom. As one of a handful of like younger conservatives in the media. So again, just as sort of like anti-trans attitudes cut across a certain age demographic ideologically, I think pro-trans attitudes cut across a younger demographic. Certainly, from the sort of more moderate wing of the Conservative Party all the way through to the kind of like anarcho-communist kind of left. And, you know, I do think that the age of legacy media having the level of influence it does, it's not over yet, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah. And I think it is that, there's really interesting demographics. And I think there's people who are very pro trans rights, as is correct, but there's a lot of people as well, and I've noticed this a lot here in Aotearoa. You've got a lot of older people as well who have that real "this is none of my business" attitude. Like there's lots of you know, people will drop in, well, that's Auntie Janet, he was Uncle James, by the way, and in the 20s started going by this, and that will be it. And this real it's not, you know, a lot of this cultural, it's not really my business, and it's not really, I don't know why there's this obsession, and I think that we can't sort of understate the power of that. And I think, going way back to what I said something earlier, part of the problem of why we are where we are is, instead of, and this is not the fault of trans people, but like the sort of liberal centrist media and the people with clout, instead of looking at the transphobic rhetoric and going, that is incoherent and a mess, and it doesn't bear any kind of thinking, there was this, we must engage with this in good faith. And I think a lot of the tipping point for people is going, this is getting quite weird now and intrusive, and a lot of people don't like the idea of legislating pants. You know, they've got like that feels like a bit like overreach, let's not do that. And I think that, inshallah, is where we end up, is people going, actually don't give a fuck about trans people at all, but this feels very invasive and unpleasant.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see what the opinions are like once, you know, the self-appointed gender cops actually start appearing in the fucking bogs, because that's what these people now feel empowered to do. Yeah. So yeah, we'll just need to see how that fucking pans out to Joe Public.
Yeah, I'm gonna reiterate something I posted on Blue Sky after the ruling, which is that, like, if you see any like transphobic harassment happening, like, you know what I mean, intervene, like, stand up for the victims.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're like cis yourself, you know what I mean, like, you need to, like, put yourself in the way there and like, you know, put it, like, help out, right? It's the least we can do.
There are some
100%.
Yeah, there are some really good guides out there on how to intervene in any kind of street harassment. Which are always worth looking up. And there's ways of doing it where it's about de-escalation, and rather than you know, don't put yourself in danger unnecessarily. But yeah, it's important. And I think another thing, and it's something that I talk about to young people and adults a lot, is when it comes to engaging with like with people who are on the train, as it were, of transphobia, is, instead of this, like, I'm going to engage them in good faith, and here is my carefully curated PowerPoint of various talking points that prove that we are in fact human beings, a much easier way to diffuse this stuff is just to say that's actually really weird. You know?
Yeah.
Like, if you argue with people or say they're wrong, that creates something from that push back against, but that's really odd. Is, you know, it changes the conversation, because what a lot of people are looking for, and I've experienced this myself, I pass well enough that people think I'm transphobic, which is bizarre, is people are looking for a level of buy-in. They're looking for someone to validate their opinion. So I will have someone come and say the most transphobic stuff to me, looking for me to buy in. And, you know, if I start arguing with them, they're like, aha, well, I'm right, because this person is engaging with me in good faith, so I must have something worth saying. But if you go, yeah, that's a very odd perspective to have, mate. That's, you know, that's weird. There's not many places to go from that.
Yeah.
Because it is weird. It doesn't make any sense. It is incoherent. Don't feed it.
Yeah. No, 100%. Is there any final points we'd like to add on to this, or are we willing to dive head first into the big pot of comment or commentary that Jamie has?
I am readier for comment or commentary than I've ever been.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, okay then, Jamie. Let's have it.
Right. Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to jettison a couple of these. But
stick them all in.
Thank fuck.
Well, apparently, Rachel Reeves is the new Pope after she submitted the perfect CV for the job. Is that comment or commentary?
Commentary.
Fuck off. Yeah, that's commentary.
No, that was a comment in the Daily Mail.
Oh, fuck's sake.
What?
Yeah. Young people in the UK are indeed facing huge problems, but they also get to enjoy all that being a citizen of this great country brings with it. This is worth protecting, and it is morally wrong to leave that entirely to others if you are able to lend a hand. It is made even more imperative since the British Army is on course to be the smallest it has been since the Napoleonic Wars. Is that comment or commentary?
That's commentary. I don't think I read that article, but it was doing the rounds, wasn't it?
Yep. Commentary, Captain Sharp.
That was Adam Toms in the Express. I'm Gen Z and would sign up to fight in World War III for Britain in an instant.
You would get fucking atomized by a nuclear bomb in an instant. Like, begging you people to watch the war game. Yeah.
That article had a poll in, would you volunteer to go to war if World War III with Putin's Russia erupted? And 62% of people said no.
62% of people have watched fucking Threads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll change their opinion when the new TV version of Threads comes out, which I'm sure is not going to be quite as hard-hitting as the film was. But
no, they said it was... Because of the way things are now, it's actually okay, and they're going to end on they're going to have a note of hope throughout.
Of course, they fucking are. Yeah, spectacular point missing. Yeah,
You're not remaking Threads if you're making it hopeful.
Single take of Stephen Graham discovering that nuclear Armageddon was caused by phones somehow.
All right. Britain has recently taken the lead in creating a coalition of the willing to support Ukraine. A maritime coalition of the willing ought to be next. A coalition of countries committed to adopting and enforcing stricter maritime rules. Such rules could include punishment of ships that harm cables and countries that construct islands in waters belonging to the coalition's members. A maritime Premier League, one might call it. Which nation, apart from ones wanting to cause harm on the high seas, wouldn't want to be part of such a prestigious club? Is that comment or commentary?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Fucking what?
Yeah. I think that's comment.
What if a yacht club but for countries? I'm fucking losing it at like illegal island. I mean, island recognition certificate.
I like maritime Premier League. I'm into that.
Yeah. Commentary.
Comment.
That was Elizabeth Braw in the Times. Britain can lead the way in making the high seas safer.
It's 2025. Putin is master of Europe. Only the British Navy and yacht clubs with their illegal island certificate stand before him. Christ almighty.
Choice is what we long. Yeah. Choice is what we longed for. Dogma is what we are fed. Elon Musk called NGOs the biggest fraud. It is high time that they were knocked off the pedestal self-interested parties built for them. Without cutting the $400 billion budget for unelectable power, Britain will never be great again. Is that comment or commentary?
Commentary. Someone in the Times. I'm not sure who.
Yeah, commentary for sure.
Sure.
That was Alex. That was Alex Story in the Express. Elon Musk's Doge exposes racket ripping off taxpayer in US, and it's hurting the UK too.
Is it Doge?
That's what, like, we've been sort of talking about transphobia to the extent that I feel like I'm going to need another shower after this before I get on with my day, and it is that last 15 minutes which I think has given me the biggest headache. I thought our call was so bad.
Yeah, right. Last one. A great exhortation of our times is the need to be kind. It manifests itself among those who cry, "Refugees welcome," who urge for compassion, for the feelings of those deemed oppressed, and for those who regard Paddington Bear as the embodiment of everything good in the world. More sinisterly, however, this mentality still shows up in those who would excuse the crimes of communism. Is that comment or commentariat?
Commentariat. Alistair Heath?
Oh, that's a good shout. It's commentariat anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
That was Patrick West in The Spectator. BBC Bite Sizes Communism Blind Spot.
And you said that there was no other news this week.
Incredible.
Oh man, glad we've
amazing.
Finally got the Reds back under the
amazing.
bed at BBC Bite Size.
That's where I was radicalised. Was
Yeah, me
studying
too,
for
yeah.
my standard grades.
I
in the late
videotaped
90s,
all of them and watched them all back, and that's how I became a communist.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Well, that's where we're going to fucking end this. I can't take it anymore if you do have any more, so it's over. So, first off, I want to thank both Juliet and Ross very, very much for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
Ross, we will get you back on to talk about literally anything else.
Yeah. Do you like shit 90s films?
I do. Absolutely do.
Oh, you fool. You fool.
Oh man, you're going to see so much Jerry Race War.
Oh, it's been a while since the Jerry Race War, actually, but yeah. So, first off, Juliet, what would you like to plug?
I don't really... Well, actually, yeah, listen to Pro Revolution Soccer, even if you don't like football. It's Tom Williams and me doing a Leftist Football podcast. New episode just come out with Ben and Jeremy Corbyn, which is a lot of fun, even though we had to cut Corbyn's anecdote about Gunnosaurus, because he didn't want to get Gunnosaurus in trouble. It's still worth listening to. Otherwise, everything is at julietjakes.com, and you can find all of my writing and film stuff there.
Nice.
Cool. Ross, what about yourself? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I shitpost Ross these days on Blue Sky. I do have because everyone does, I do have a podcast in the works with some other people. Watch this space. But apart from that, do not try and find me.
Yeah. Same goes for all of us, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But what you should do to find us, if you really, really must, is patreon.com/praxiscast. 2 bonus episodes a month, Discord access, etc., etc. Merch is also available, praxiscast.tmail.com, and streams are still sometimes happening. I'm not saying it's definitely happening because Alistair's not here to confirm it, but they usually happen at about 6:30 on a Sunday, twitch.tv/praxiscast. And that'll do it from us. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Yes.